Right then guys, here I am for the 21st episode in my Stewart's Manager career mode on Grand Prix World. In this episode we're going to be kicking off the final quarter of the 2000 season. Just a quick recap first of the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari haven't definitely won it. Benetton are the only team that can mathematically beat them, but even then it's unlikely. Ferrari have already got 119 points. Benetton only 75, McLaren in third only 48. I think the top three positions are pretty much set in stone. Ferrari first, Benetton second, McLaren third. There's too big of a points gap for any of that to change. Williams have got 27 points. They would need to pretty much double the amount of points they got in the past 12 races in the next 4 races to beat McLaren. It's not going to happen. Williams fourth. However, we're in 5th, only 4 points back. Actually, it wasn't that long ago we were 4th in the Constructors' Championship. We could beat Williams, and that would be quite some achievement. It is possible. 4 points. I'm surprised we're this close. And also, I'm surprised just how far back Tyrrell are. Because earlier on this season, we were scrapping with Tyrrell. Now we're scrapping with Williams. That is a big shock, but Tyrrell have got less than half the points of us. And actually, one thing which I really am surprised by is how close Tyrrell and Jordan are. Because as far as I'm concerned, Tyrrell have been a much quicker team, while Jordan have been not much quicker than Minardi in quite a few races. Yet somehow, Jordan have scored 9 points, Tyrrell only 2 more, so actually, as much as we could beat Williams, Jordan, amazingly, could beat Tyrrell. Michael Schumacher has dominated this season. He's on 80 points. That's 26 more than Heinz-Harald Frentzen in second, and more than double his own teammate who's third in the Drivers' Championship. Michael Schumacher surely cannot lose this championship. However, he was much further ahead just 2 races ago, because in the past 2 races, Michael Schumacher has retired. His championship lead is still big, but it's been closed down at quite a rate. The thing is though, is surely he cannot lose it. He did lose the Drivers' Championship in 1998, but he wasn't dominant in 1998. Here in the year 2000 he totally is, because, well, partly because Mika Häkkinen is stuck driving a Prost, whereas in 1998 he was driving for McLaren. And here's the thing, in 1998 Mika Häkkinen won the Drivers' Championship with only 64 points. Last season Michael Schumacher won the Drivers' Championship with 2 fewer points than he's got now. You see, Mercedes, they were giving us engines for free. Now they're giving us free engines plus $1,060,000. The second bonus is assisting in engine R&D. Now this is where it gets interesting, because I speculated in the previous episode that Ferrari had done something to the Mercedes engine, because the Mercedes engine is reliable, as you can see, maximum reliability, but Michael Schumacher retired from the previous 2 Grand Prix. So I speculated that Ferrari had modified their engine using the R&D perk, which they probably have, because they have got a works deal with Mercedes-Benz, as you can see. So I thought maybe Ferrari had done something with the R&D and reduced the reliability, but there isn't any evidence of that. What there is evidence of is a 4th model engine, as you can see. MBZ 4th model. These are the performance stats of the 4th model engine. We don't have that. You can tell that we may not be Mercedes' lowest priority, but we're certainly not their highest. We've still only got the 3rd model engine. Now, that's where it gets interesting, because there is no evidence. To be fair, I don't think custom-made engines actually appear on this screen. And if they would, it would say MBZ V1000, and then it would say, instead of XX, it would say FE, if it was tuned by Ferrari. But there isn't. XX is a standard engine available to, theoretically, all of the teams in which they supply, but I don't know whether Sauber have got it yet. They are a works team, but we are the quicker one. Ferrari have got the 4th model engine. It's still maximum reliability. I don't know whether Ferrari have modified their engine. That's the thing, is they don't need to take points off of reliability. They've got a works engine deal. If they can modify their engine, they don't need to take points off. They can just add points on. So it's really, really interesting. I think Ferrari have just got brutally unlucky in the past few races, because there's nothing to suggest that they've made their engine bad. If anything, they should have a better engine than us. Here I am on the setup screen, and as you can see, I have got the maximum amount of setup points, and I'm going to add them all to Rain. Although I don't think we'll be able to max out Takaki's. No, we will. Yes, so both Takaki and Pedro Diniz have got maxed out Rain. So their cars are going to be perfectly suited to a wet track, sort of compensating for their lack of personal ability. Although I think Diniz is okay, Takaki is bad. I think Diniz's wet weather stat is, to be honest, I don't know. Actually, I really don't know. But neither of them are amazing in wet conditions. But we're heading to Belgium. Now Belgium, like Britain, like Japan potentially actually, it is likely to be a wet Grand Prix. Certainly it's more likely to be a wet Belgian Grand Prix than say a wet Italian Grand Prix or a wet Spanish Grand Prix. I mean, I've been saving these setup points for a long time. I don't know exactly how long I've had them, but for most of the season. And this is pretty much the best opportunity this season to do it. I was contemplating using the setup points for the British Grand Prix, but I thought I'd do this in a live commentary episode. So here we are. The Belgian Grand Prix, let's get into it, and hopefully it's going to be a wet race. Well, so much for sticking all of our setup points into it being wet, because it's a dry qualifying session. In fact, the wind speed is high. I probably, in qualifying, would have been better off sticking my setup points into wind, but even still, a dry qualifying session, and let's see how well we do. So, in qualifying, Michael Schumacher has taken pole position, David Coulthard second, Damon Hill third, Pedro Diniz in 4th place. That's fantastic. In fact, I think that might be our best qualifying position to date. 4th place, that's fantastic, although it is odd, this qualifying session, because, well, Diniz is 4th, that's about 4 places further up than I would expect. Then you've got Jean Alesi, then Tyrrell, then Irvine, then Herbert, then Heinz-Harald Frentzen down in 9th. Moreira down in 11th. Benetton started off this season as the quickest team. I mean, let's not forget, Benetton have got the best chassis on the grid. Theoretically, joint best, tied with Prost, but, well, who knows? What about Prost? Fisichella! Giancarlo Fisichella banned after qualifying. That is a shock. And it also puts a dent into Ferrari's armour-plated Constructors' Championship position. Prost have actually traded blows with arrows, fair play to them. Verstappen 18th, Hakkinen 19th, Magnussen 20th, and Alberto Marini last, by quite some way actually, 0.6 of a second in 21st place. And finally, Tora Takaki, my second driver, although Diniz and Takaki are on equal footing, it's in their contract, they're equal drivers, but Takaki qualified 10 positions behind his teammate. Yes, that is exactly what I wanted, a heavy rain Belgian Grand Prix. Brilliant! We've got a car set up specifically for these conditions, and I think the Goodyear tyres are pretty good in wet conditions as well. I just want to see how well we do, because this is the first time this series that I have successfully used the setup exploit. I've tried it on a couple of other occasions, but you've never seen it in the video because I've done it and the races turned out to be dry. But this time I've done it. It's heavy rain, not even just light rain, but heavy rain. Our car has been set up specifically for these conditions. Let's see how well we do. There you go, Pedro Diniz finished on the podium. He beat the wet weather specialist of Jean Alesi. That's the thing, is this was a Grand Prix of wet weather specialist drivers versus wet weather specialist cars. Michael Schumacher still won because of course he did. Damon Hill in second place, but Pedro Diniz, who is by no means a wet weather specialist, but the Stewart car for this Grand Prix, this one race only, was. And he finished in third place with it. Jean Alesi, he is fantastic in wet weather conditions, yet he finished in fourth place. Hakkinen, down in 12th. He's a wet weather specialist. He didn't even beat Jarno Trulli. Tora Takaki started in 14th place and nearly scored a point. Wow. I think this Grand Prix just goes to show just how good that exploit is. Although it's not really an exploit, it's more assuming what the weather's going to be and banking everything on it. I mean, you know, it's statistically reasonably likely it's going to rain in Belgium. We just hoped it would. Down at the back, well, Johnny Herbert retired, so did Frentzen, Moreira, in fact actually both Benettons retired. Hakkinen did do quite well actually, I suppose. I mean, for a wet weather specialist, quite underwhelming, but he did finish in 12th. He did beat Nakano, Rosset and both Arrows. But in an earlier Grand Prix, in the previous episode, I think, well, it was a wet Grand Prix and Hakkinen finished in 7th. This is why it's underwhelming. I know he's in an awful car, but 12th place at a heavy rain Grand Prix for Mika Hakkinen, that is actually, dare I say it, disappointing. Well, now it's official. Michael Schumacher is the 2000 Formula 1 Drivers' Champion. There's nothing anyone else can do with 3 races left to go. Frentzen would need 6 points more at least to even mathematically have a hope. Michael Schumacher, 90 points. Already, there's still 3 races left to go. He might even get into triple figure points, which is astonishing. Frentzen is looking pretty comfortable for second place. I don't see Fisichella doing anything. Never mind Coulthard. Damon Hill, what a rise up the Drivers' Championship he's had recently. He's now 5th. And I want to remind everyone, it wasn't that long ago that he was in, I think, 13th. Now he's in 5th. I needed to break out my calculator to see if Ferrari have mathematically, definitively won the Constructors' Championship. And they have. They totally have. Ferrari are the 2000 Formula 1 Constructors' Champions. That's pretty much it. The only other story in the Constructors' Championship is that we're now joint 4th with Williams. We're both on 27 points. So actually, I really am entertaining the notion that we could finish in 4th because, well, we're joint 4th at the moment. We beat Williams in the last race. We scored more points than them. And yes, we did get lucky with the weather conditions, but we still scored points. They didn't. We could do it. If we finish 4th this season, that'll be a miraculous achievement. I thought the Formula 1 grid had finally got shot of Mechachrome engines, but Williams are leaving Ford and going back to Mechachrome. Why? Why would they leave a partner deal with Ford to get a customer deal with Mechachrome? Why? Well, to be fair, I guess they did make the mistake of leaving their engine negotiations until late. Well, certainly, you know, most other teams have signed engine arrangements, but Peugeot is still available with a works deal. Why not go with them? Or Mugen Honda? Tom Walkinshaw, the Arrows manager, has been voted the worst manager of the month. Meanwhile, the best manager of the month isn't Jean Todt. Now that doesn't make any sense. Michael Schumacher won the previous Grand Prix. Why is Ron Dennis the manager of the month? I mean, Earlier on this season, I was convinced Jean Todt was rigging the award because he was winning it all the time, I guess, somewhat justifiably, but then one time he won it when Ron Dennis should have done. Now this is the opposite because Jean Todt surely should have won the Manager of the Month, or maybe me. I mean, we're both more deserving of it than Ron Dennis. Yeah, sure, Ron Dennis got Damon Hill to finish in second. Damon Hill has shot up the Drivers' Championship, but Manager of the Month, based on the previous Grand Prix, or really it should be, I mean, Manager of the Month is actually a really bad name because there's 16 Manager of the Month awards per year, so that doesn't make sense, even once you exclude the fact the F1 season doesn't even run in December or January or February. So there's 16 Manager of the Month awards in 9 months at most. So really it's Manager of the Grand Prix, but Ron Dennis doesn't deserve it. Well, not more so than Jean Todt, or even surely myself. I mean, surely I deserve it based on the fantastic qualifying and race we had last time out. Let's have a look at the current contract we've got in place with Mercedes, and as you can see, we've got no priority. Ferrari probably do. Even if they don't in their contract, they're going to have priority over us naturally because they're a quicker team and because Mercedes invest millions into Ferrari because of the works arrangement. To be fair, I think Mercedes do give us something, I think a few $100,000, but it's tiny compared to what they give Ferrari and Sauber actually. Hence how we're late to getting the 4th model engine, but if we did have a works deal, we could have had priority. We could have had that in our contract, but anyway, we don't have R&D either. So let's have a look at the 4th model engine. It is better by 1 in fuel and response, I believe. Let's have a look at that again. Fuel and response. Yes. So there you go. It's a better engine in terms of fuel conservation and in terms of responsiveness. Fantastic. This engine, I mean, look at it. That is a fantastic engine. So off to Italy we go for the 14th race in this season. I don't think this is going to be as interesting of a race for us personally because we don't have any setup points to use. Even if we did, it's much more likely to be dry here than it was in Belgium. So I think this is going to be a much more standard race for us. Having said that, we are going to Monza and we do have the Mercedes engine, a maximum power engine and the best engine on the grid. Around Monza, that's all you really need. So hopefully we can score points for the 2nd race in a row. Well, there you have it. It's raining in Italy as well. A light rain qualifying session is due, so we all know who's going to come out on top. It's, yeah, a foregone conclusion. 0.8 of a second, Michael Schumacher beat Damon Hill. Jean Alesi in 3rd, that's somewhat predictable. Certainly Jean Alesi is very good in wet conditions, but that's pretty good going. 3rd place in a Jordan, that's impressive, even despite the conditions. Fisichella 4th, Frentzen 5th, Coulthard 6th, Nakano, Irvine, Trulli, Herbert, Diniz, Sarlo, Moreira, all the way down in 13th. At least Frentzen improved on where he qualified in Belgium, but to be fair, this is a wet qualifying session. Moreira is the sort of guy who shouldn't really be racing in a Formula 1 car, so to qualify in 13th, even with... I keep saying the Benetton is the best car on the grid. I mean, it's probably the 2nd best car. I mean, it's difficult to say. It's got the best chassis. Its engine certainly lets it down. But, you know, it's difficult to compare an amazing driver like Schumacher or Hill to someone like Moreira because they're complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And you could say the same thing for Alberto Marini. He's another driver who shouldn't really be racing around in Formula 1, but at least he's driving for a backmarker team. I mean, Moreira somehow fluked a seat at Benetton. At least Marini's only in Prost, although Prost should have been quick this year. They've got the joint best chassis. I don't know what happened. Prost with Hakkinen at the wheel should have been the quickest team. Hakkinen should have won the Drivers' Championship. I do not know what went wrong at Prost. Even in a wet qualifying session, Hakkinen qualified in 14th. Diniz beat him. Yes, the Stewart's a quicker car, but We don't even have any setup points. Even Deniz still beat the wet weather god of Mika Hakkinen. But then again, there's only so much a driver can do with a awful piece of machinery. He did beat Montoya, Tyrrell, Takaki all the way down in 17th. That's a throwback to seasons gone by. I mean, 2 drivers didn't make the 107% time, Alberto Marini and Jan Magnussen, but Arrows and Prost have been in a really bad way this season. Arrows I don't understand because they're basically the same team as they were last season. Nothing's changed from last season to this season, but maybe that's exactly it. Maybe they didn't change anything. Maybe they're running an old car. I don't know. Either way, Magnussen won't be taking part in the race, and neither will Alberto Marini. Okay, so this is going to be the exact opposite of the Belgian Grand Prix, a wet qualifying session followed by a dry race, whereas in Belgium it was the exact opposite. But a dry race does open up the opportunity for anyone within reason to do well, because on a wet track, by far the most important thing, way above everything else, is the driver's wet weather stat. Everything else is tertiary, not even secondary to that. But on a dry track, it's all about the driver's skill overall and the car overall. It's all about the complete package, not one particular stat. I did not expect that. Damon Hill has won the 2000 Italian Grand Prix, leading a McLaren 1-2 with David Coulthard in second. And actually, David Coulthard was, and probably still is unless it's changed, was McLaren's driver number 1. Damon Hill, the number 2 in the team, has beaten the number 1. I mean, it's all just a number on a bit of paper, but the number 2 has beaten the number 1. I'm surprised Ron Dennis allowed it. But Damon Hill has been on a bit of a roll recently. This is his second race win in the past few Grand Prix. Then it's the Italian team of Benetton in 3rd and 4th, Frentzen beating Moreira. Then it's the other Italian team of Ferrari in 5th and 6th. That's an upset. I mean, meaningless now because the Drivers' Championship is wrapped up. Well, first place is. I mean, there's still a lot to fight for lower down. Speaking of which, Stewart didn't score any points. Neither did Williams, so we're still joint 4th in the Constructors' Championship. One thing I do want to draw your attention to is just how small the gaps are that separate 3rd down to 6th. Heinz-Harald Frentzen beat his teammate by just less than half a second. Then you've got Michael Schumacher, who finished 100th of a second behind Moreira. 100th! What's that as a car length? That must be nothing. That must have been basically a photo finish across the line. That is extraordinary. And then Fisichella was only another just less than half a second behind his teammate. Just under 1 second separates Frentzen down to Fisichella. That is 3rd to 6th, separated by the tiniest of margins. That must have looked amazing as they crossed the line. Only 4 drivers retired from the race. Esteban Tyrrell, and nobody knows why or how he retired. Eddie Irvine had an engine failure, as did Shinji Nakano. The difference is Eddie Irvine in the Jordan uses a Ford engine, which has a fairly low reliability rating. I mean, they could have actually improved it over the course of the season. I haven't checked, but even still, the point still stands, is their engine is going to be less reliable than the Mercedes engine that Shinji Nakano in the Sauber runs. Earlier on this season, Hill was engulfed by the shadow of David Coulthard. Here we are now, 2 races from the end of the season, and Damon Hill is only 4 points behind his teammate. And here's the Constructors' Championship, and there really is nothing to talk about. There's no meaningful change. Ferrari are now 50 points ahead of Benetton. 50 points separate the 2 Italian teams. The only other thing really worth mentioning is that McLaren have closed the gap on Benetton. McLaren, despite what I said earlier on in this episode, could beat Benetton for 2nd in the Constructors' Championship. Williams have done this in the past, firing someone just before the end of the season. Arrows have fired their commercial manager with 2 races left to go, without signing a replacement presumably, so Arrows have got no commercial manager. I mean, to be fair, come the end of the season, most of their work is done, but why fire them? Why not just let the guy's contract elapse? Well, let me just check. So that means Arrows have got no commercial manager, presumably. Yeah. I've sorted it by teams in alphabetical order, and Benetton are at the top. And presumably you will find Kaiser, yeah, fired. Even Minardi have produced a full sponsorship package. Anyway, Tom Walkinshaw for the second race in a row has been voted the worst manager of the month. And Ron Dennis, and this time it's appropriate, Ron Dennis rightly has been voted the manager of the month. So that's everything for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys will watch the next episode, even though we already know Michael Schumacher is this season's Drivers' Champion, and Ferrari are this season's Constructors' Champions. Even still, I hope you guys will watch the next episode, and if you do, I'll see you guys then.